Before we start, if you enjoyed our content, please take this moment to support us by clicking on the subscribe button, liking this video, and sharing it with others. It's a small request, but it means a lot to us. Thank you. We have discussed before about the comic book industry. We've touched on it many a times, how it is just literally in flames, whereas, it just, because of politics, wokeness, and many other issues that has happened throughout the 80 plus years that the industry has been around. And there's one person that has been warning us all this time, and pretty much he's been deemed crazy. It's all that. And, most of you, I'm Zane. Welcome to another edition of Madman with the Show. Thank you for your support out there. Thank you very much. Alan Moore. Now, if you've been in a cave and not know who Alan Moore is the man who has created some of the most iconic literary, and I call them literary, books of all time, and I'm including Watchmen, V for Vendetta, and many others. And one of them has gone on the best literary list. Last time that's going to happen on any literary list, but it shouldn't be, because people like him have made very good stories. And I keep saying this: we need good stories. And it seems like Hollywood has also lost touch with that as well. Completely going woke and politics and diversity, integrity, whatever the freaking words are that pisses me off on here, because every day you hear the next thing and the next thing. I just finished watching The Boys over the weekend, and episode 7, I knew there was some trouble. I knew major trouble with this series. Episode 8, I'm still going through the comic. I'm in, what am I, issue 4, issue 5, something like that. And I see the major differences of the characters and all that. And I could say that The Boys did go woke a bit. I mean, some people will say otherwise, that it has gone completely full tilt. I say, we're at that point with this show. And then you hear some interviews that comes out concerning comics from Alan Moore. He has a new series, I think it's a movie or series trailer. It came out recently. I haven't got the full information yet. I don't know what it's about. It looks very good. Because one thing you could tell Alan Moore. In fact, he's in the movie, this project himself on there, and this is something he didn't sell out on, and that is the problem in this industry, is that a lot of these guys, their creations have been taken, and I'm going to take it from the words of Alan Moore on there. Let me just briefly bring you up. This is some things from Bounding into Comics and Deadline. Moore opened up to Deadline and thinks that superheroes are a blight and infantizing influence on the culture. Most people equate comics with superhero movies now, which he finds troubling, which is true. That adds another layer of difficulty for me, he continued. I have seen superhero movies since the first Tim Burton Batman. They have blighted the cinema and also blighted the culture to a degree. And that's true as well. Moore would then add, several years ago, I thought it was really a worrying sign that hundreds of thousands of adults were queuing up to see characters that were created 50 years ago to entertain 12-year-old boys. And that is a major thing. I love comics. I love stories. I love to have stories on there. But honestly, a lot of the stories that were originally made, like when you hear Iron Man and Fantastic Four and Spider-Man and Batman and all these, Superman, all these stories were years ago, and they were meant for boys to look at and stuff like that. Now, doesn't mean that adults can't read it, but you have to put to the perspective is when you put it on the big screen, you have to understand where these heroes came from, these stories and stuff like that. And I think that is where we're losing the translation. We're taking it from someone who created this, and then you're bending it and you're twisting it and you're trying to adapt it to today's society, and you can't do that. You can't really do that because it wasn't built on that. It wasn't. It is a fantasy world. It's an escapism and stuff like that. Taking more from the interview, and a lot of this is from the deadline part. Moore had said, "I'm not so interested in comics anymore. I don't want to do anything with them. I've been doing them for 40 some years. I finally retired. When I entered the comic industry, the big attraction was that it was a medium that was vulgar. It had created to entertain the working class people, particularly children. The way that the industry has changed. It's graphic novels now. It's entirely priced for an audience of the middle class people," which is true. If you look at what is out, they don't really gauge it to too much of the youth. It is put more primarily to a lot of the woke agendas, a lot of the middle class, the adults. And all you gotta do is you see on there. I mean, nothing against Deadpool. And I love Deadpool. And you see Deadpool's an R-rated film. It's adult. But you look at other ones and stuff like that. There are many different storylines and great stuff like that that's out there, but they don't use them. They don't. They deem them. That's not gonna be this, and that. And when you see the comic put on the screen, it's like, what the hell are they doing? I have nothing against the middle class people, getting back to more, but it meant to be a medium for middle-aged hobbyists. It meant for, and this is important, it was meant to be a medium for people who haven't gotten much money. That is true. When I was young, I basically, I scripted and saved every penny I had to get a comic every week, my allowance, everything like that. I would beg my dad, I begged my mom, could I get a couple of, and all that. And then finally, when I got to work, I scrimped and saved, what I paid for school. And then when I went to the comic book store, I went to a great comic school, Forbidden Planet, which is still down on 14th Street, Union Square, and one of the great comic book stores on there. And it's not so great now. I mean, I still enjoy it. I don't go there anymore because it's distance for me to get there now. Even though I do live in New York City, but I don't like to take that travel, and I was using somebody else closer to me. But now these days with Amazon and all that, I can order my comic books in now. Most people equate comics with superhero movies now. That adds another layer of difficulty for me. I haven't seen a super movie since the first Tim Burton Batman film. They have blighted the cinema and also blighted the culture to a degree. And that's true. Several years ago, I thought it was really worrying sign that hundreds of thousands, they queued up. But they seem to speak to some sort of longing to escape the complexities of the modern world and go back to nostalgia, remembering childhood. That seemed dangerous. It infantized the population. It was largely my work that attracted an audience. It was that way commercialized by the comic book industry that there were tons of headlines saying that comics had grown up. But other than a couple particular individual comics, they really hadn't. This thing happened with graphic novels in the 80s. People wanted to carry on reading comics as they always has, and could now in public and feel sophisticated because they weren't reading a children's comic. It was as subnormal. You didn't get a huge advances in adult comic books that I was thinking we might have as we witnessed the endless superhero films. If you notice, and this is happening to anime as well, and manga. You're seeing Hollywood just draw into all this, and we're talking 80 years. Alan Moore says, he doesn't think that the mainstream comic industry is going to survive this lockdown. Which is true. I mean, we're seeing what's happening at Diamond. DeLeo said Diamond, DC Comics, Marvel Comics, the issues they're going in there, and the comics that they're putting out now. When you have guys like Ethan Van Sciver and Alterna Comics and a couple of others that have put out some really good work. I mean, I have found some really, really good work. Stories that, it doesn't revolve around superheroes. Of the nature, it's just pure action, pure adventure. I've been reading various different stories, some of horror, some of science fiction. I've ordered a couple more. Some stuff I've seen online. I even backed an Indiegogo that really I will discuss in another edition. That I thought it would look very good, a good sci-fi story, And I said, finally, even Razor Fist has one. I ordered that one. I just ordered that one, the hardcover on that one also, and it looked very good on there. Because it's all down to stories. And when you look at the trailer, and I'm going to read all the synopsis of this from his new trailer, the show. Nothing to do with the Giancarlo movie that was a couple of years ago. This is something new. A frightening focused man of many talents, passports, and identities arrives at England's broken heart, a haunted Midlands town that has collapsed to a black hole of dreams, only to find that his new territory is at least strange and dangerous as he is, attempting to locate certain persons and certain artifacts for his existence client. He finds himself sinking into a quicksand of twilight world of dead Lotharians, comatose sleeping beauties, voodoo gangsters, masked adventurers, unlikely 1930s private eyes, and violent, I can't pronounce that word, Shiarsuso women, and this is Northampton when it's still awake. Once the town closes its eyes, there's another world entirely going beneath the twitching lids, a world of glittering and sinister delirium, much worse than any social or economic devastation. Welcome to the British nightmare, with its gorgeous flesh, its tinsel and luminous light, entertaining monsters, and hallucinatory auticity. Now, understand, Moore doesn't like a lot of the politics, a lot of the politicians that are going on these days and stuff like that. But he, with what he dislikes and as far as what's going on in the world, he could still make very good stories like this, like this. This looks very good, and I'm interested to see it. It's directed by Mitch Jenkins, starring Tom Burke, Siobhan Hewlett, Alan Moore is in it also, Daryl De Silva, Richard. It looks very good, and I hope it is very good. And they've said, do it yourself. If you don't like it, do it yourself. And Alan Moore did it. He went out and did it himself. We're in an issue, whereas I think now when we're looking at Hollywood and the comic book industry, it needs to be rebuilt from a different angle. It needs to be reborn. It needs to rise up like a phoenix again in a different way, because the way it was before, I think it's pretty much gone at this point. It's not in existence. I mean, like I said, you have situations where comics years ago were catered to children, and that's the truth. And what happened was something happened along the way, and comic books lost its way. Doesn't mean adults can't read comics. It's okay. But when you start to put them into movies and starts to twist what they look like and stuff like that. I mean, look at the DC movies. I mean, they're horrifying. And a lot of the animation series are much improved. The live action stuff is just, it's horrendous. It's totally horrendous. It's garbage. And Marvel is getting that way too. It's getting to that point. I mean, you have some peak outs that here and there that are okay. I mean, look how many X-Men movies have there been, and how many of them have been really truly successful on there. I mean, look at the this last X-Men movie that's been held back for the one they were trying to make into a horror film and stuff like that. How many times have they tried to, mold this movie, and finally comes out and it just doesn't do well. And the same thing with the Phoenix Saga and stuff like that. Hollywood is missing the point. They're missing the point on these, and they need to stop this superhero thing, stop the manga thing, and all that. Get to new stories. I wrote on one of the Twitter pages for Disney, stop the reboots, stop all this that changes that you're making and stuff like that, and make good stories. There was a time when Disney made good stories, wrote good stories. Some of them were good, some of them were good, and then there were other stories that weren't good. I mean, you had movies like Tron, The Black Hole. A lot of the Kurt Russell comedies that Disney put out a long time ago. You had a lot of the nature shows that they did and stuff like that. And they were good stuff, but not anymore. And you look and you try to look at all the things that they purchased: Star Wars, Marvel, and they're hurting them all. They've all destroyed every one of them. Star Trek, Star Wars, Doctor Who, they're pretty much dead. I mean, I like Mandalorian. Don't get me. I will watch Mandalorian. But as far as the series, until something else in there, I'm going to be reading the old books. I just ordered some of the older novels, and I'm going to be taking on those novels again on there. And that's the same thing you should do. Go out and watch the older stuff. Go out and watch the older films and stuff like that. Now the theaters are not going to be opening anytime soon. Go take on the older things. So, I got a couple questions. What do you think of what Alan Moore has said on there? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you agree that the comic book industry has changed drastically? How do you feel about that? And the last question is, what can be done? What can done to fix this? If it's fixable, I don't think it is. I think it needs to move on and be reborn into something else. So, subscribe, like, share this video, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you for watching.